right. So my concern is the Marxist nature of BLM. I feel like the very real concerns of disparity in the Black community are being exploited by those with Marxist ideologies to achieve Marxist goals through the guise of racial justice. I feel it has invaded every aspect of our lives, including our churches. So well-meaning churchgoers and leaders are adopting this Marxist language because racial justice is so important. Many people are completely unaware that Marxism has slowly crept back into our American culture. How can we inform of the very real threats of Marxist ideas while separating it from the need for racial justice? I unmuted you, didn't I, Neil? Okay.
Here we go. By the way, can you, a fan just went on, a heater went on in the background. Can you hear that?
Yeah, that's me.
Perfect.
Yeah, is that okay? Can you hear me over that?
Yes.
Or do I need to try and turn it off?
No.
Okay. So here's the problem. Marxism always shows up, and it's showed up in many cultures to try and equal out the disparity in anything, the poor and the rich, in between the haves and the have-nots, between the landowners and the non-landowners, between the laborers and the non-laborers, between the bankers and the non-bankers, although that might be a special situation there. And it's always come in and said, look, we are going to solve these problems. And Marxism found out that they could not make any leeway, any headway into America, because Americans were like, yeah, we understand the disparity, but we understand the free market too. And most Americans are like, okay, we're okay. We like the free market because we've seen the lack of the free market in other countries. So we don't want to do that. So the Marxists made very little headway into America until they realized that the reason that they were not making any headway was that the Americans were not brought up in the Marxist way. They'd not been brainwashed from birth. They've been right from birth. They were taught about the free market, individualism, and all that stuff. So they decided that the only way they can get at our nation is through two things. One, education. They have to educate kids at a young age. And so therefore you see this huge move. Dewey was a Marxist, the Dewey Decimal System, the Dewey filing system, right? The libraries are all filed with the Dewey system. Well, he was a Marxist, right? Or a fledgling communist, if you will. And so he decides that he's going to start incorporating this into the school system. And so we end up with the grade schools and the high schools. And then you have this influx into the colleges. And we have the Marxists in the colleges. In fact, at one point, Dinesh D'Souza says, there are more Marxists in the colleges in America than there are in the entire Soviet Union, right? Russia at that time, Russia, the Soviet Union, Poland, right? So you see this push to bring Marxism here. But what's interesting too, along with that, is back in the 50s, the Marxists, actually, and there's a document there by an African-American, and I keep saying I'm going to publish this somewhere. We actually did post on our Facebook page by an African-American who joined the Marxist movement, who joined the communist movement, and left it when he realized it was all lies. And he said, what the Marxists realized that the only way they would break down America, the only way they could bring Marxism into America is to cause racial strife. He said, this is the Achilles heel of America. If we can cause America to break out in strife and break out in violence, then we can move in with communism and Marxism. And if you look at the history of communism and Marxism, in many places, it wasn't, and in some places it was a move by the Marxists, but in many other places it wasn't. It was an accidental issue. Like, for instance, even in Russia, the Marxists were posturing for their position, but when they actually took over, they didn't even fire a shot. I think there was one shot fired by a ship offshore. But basically, they went into the Tsar's palace and nobody was there, and they just took it over. They didn't fight anyone. It was just like an accidental thing. Same thing if you look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia became communist under Mengistu Haile Mariam, and that was because there was a civil war going on between Eritrea and southern Ethiopia. And Mengistu Haile Mariam said, here's my opportunity to take over as a communist leader. So this is what they are trying to do. They're trying to break us down and saying, look, we are going to promise you something. And look at every Marxist country, look at every communist country. has life improved for anyone except for the nomenclatura, which are the high-ranking people. And you'll see that life did not improve for anyone, but for the high-ranking people. So what they're selling is a bill of goods, and racism is their avenue to try and solve this, and it's not going to work. It's going to be worse than anything else.
So you've got some great history and foundational facts, but I want to bring that into the messaging that's coming out and how that's affecting the church, right? Because I mean, we could have this conversation and go into critical race theory, and maybe we won't do that right now. We'll save that for another webinar. That's another webinar. But so we understand the foundations of Marxism. Thank you, Neil. Now it's creeping into the church.